very unusual cast-on technique, which you can see here. One stitch forward in a cast-on, and then one stitch backward. One stitch forward, one stitch backward. Forward and backward. The reason I do that is that you create these little double stitches. And because the stitches are doubled up and tight together like this, you can knit right through them and you will create a loose but stiff edge to your sock. This one is knitted exactly the same way. You can see that that top is very stiff, but it also stretches almost to the size of the leg of the sock. So we're going to show you the transition to your next needle. I pull it really tight because we want that not to show in the end product. And it's backward and forward and backward, forward and backward. Okay, we've cast on our stitches all the way around, and now we're going to go and make the first line after that. Now, I really appreciate it in a knitting book when they tell you something is going to be difficult. And I'm telling you, getting through the first stitch of this is difficult. I use my nail to raise it up like so. Tighten that down. It's not easy, and you grab your line and then you pull it tight. And now you can just sort of open these up a little bit and then knit through two. Open it up a little bit and knit through two. This is a transition stitch. The first row I do in simple stockinette. Any pattern I establish later will begin in the third row of the round. Now, not many people use a double cast on to begin their work, but let me show you why I use it. Here's one that I took off the needles already, and you can see that before it's been washed it kind of flares out. It's not very elegant. But once the sock has been washed, it tightens up. It's very straight, it's very stiff, it doesn't roll, it's quite stretchy, as stretchy almost as the leg. You can put it into any pattern. This is Knit 2 Purl 2. You can see that that doesn't roll, as stretchy as the leg, opens up perfectly. Even on a complex sock like this one, you can see that this hasn't even been washed yet, and look, it's already starting to lay flat. Turn the blocking. We've gone down around the first one, and now we pull this out. And even if it doesn't look very elegant now, it certainly will look so later. And there you go. The first stitch on the row on the new needle is always the hardest. After that it gets much easier. While we're watching me knit this knit purl on this cuff, you can see that I use a rather eccentric method of knitting, which I learned both from drawing room knitting and from the Amish when I was a teenager. This particular form of knitting, you go, your knit stitches are oriented correctly, and you would go through the front of the loop as you're supposed to. But on the purl stitches, the stitches are reversed, and you call this going through the back of the loop. And all of my stitches will be oriented opposite each other, like this. And there won't be any, it won't be visible in the knitting at all. It's just way faster. This is one of the fastest knitting methods I've ever found. Okay, so now we're going to join in our new color. I use a little crochet hook to help me get that overhand knot just as tight up against there as I can. I can put that over there. And now we're going to lay in a transition to the new color. I'm going to increase the size of the needle to 3.0. And here it is. It's just a plain, simple stockinette stitch. We want it for transition so that we can change the number of stitches that are on this set of needles. We were currently working with 60 stitches. Now we're going to increase to 64. So there will be 16 on each needle. And you can see that the loopy side is beginning to take shape, and the other side is also beginning to take shape, so that it will look like that when we're done. Okay, this is a tricky part. I'm knitting out of this end of the ball, and now I'm going to use the other end of the ball that's on the outside to create a little row that will form the other side of that opening for the heel. And we're going to use the same cast on technique we used before. Forward, backward, forward, backward, forward, backward, and so on. Okay, now we're going to lay in the backward row here, and this will give us an easy knitting matrix to insert into our sock. So if you remember from our discussion of cast on, we have casted on the number of stitches that we need, and we go through 2 each time. This prevents the stitches from bunching up, being tight. My son has size 14 feet. If you bunch up these stitches and you make them tight, he will not be able to get the sock on or off. So now we have this weird little strip of single row knitting, and we're going to use it to insert the heel, the other side of the heel, the foot of the, what will become the foot of the sock, back into our sock. We're just going to have a simple knit because we're not trying to lay down the pattern until the next row. This is just a transition row. This looks really floppy and awkward, but here's what it looks like when it's finished. You have the body of the sock, you have the foot of the sock. The heel is completely replaceable because the body is separated from the sock. You see, I can cut that heel out and completely replace it without worrying about interrupting the sock pattern at all. So we've now arrived to the other side of our sock, and oh my goodness, there's a lot of extra stuff there. So what do? I just tighten it up a bit by adding one little extra stitch. It's really important in this first row here that, especially on the corners, that you make it really tight there, because that's where the sock can get loose and form little holes, and people don't like those. They're not smooth. They don't feel good on the foot. And as you can see, in the final part of this lesson, we have managed to begin to lay in the foot of the sock, and we have this gaping sort of shark-like mouth that we will fill up. But as you can see from our example, it closes up into a nice, smooth, streamlined sock with the body and the foot. It forms to a nice 90-degree angle, as you can see. So in our next lesson, we will learn how to add the heel in. Thanks, and happy knitting!